Hello, Croissant Shemai. Welcome to the Fathers of Metal podcast with myself, Daddy Hugh.
And myself, Papa Ben. Hello and welcome back.
Thank you very much. So tonight it's Rockerspective episode 2, where we look at a year in metal music and handpick a mix of the most influential and our favourite albums and discuss them amongst ourselves, noting our favourite songs,
Yeah.
riffs, and our reasons why we enjoy listening to them over and over again. And Ben, today we focus on my favourite year in metal, which is 1984, which was just over 36 years ago. So Papa Ben, I'm very excited. What about you?
Yeah, well, you know what? This has been a real eye opener for me. Obviously there's one standout album which everyone knows came out in 1984. And apart from that and Power Slave, I'd never really explored much more than that. But this has been a really good journey for me because there's been some good albums come out this year, and I can totally see why this is your favorite year. You know, I mean, I couldn't maybe coming from a slightly different, well, not quite a different era, but yeah, like I think I don't actually know. I'll have to give it some thought what my favorite year is, but this is a strong year, and it's not even so much. I mean, every year loads of albums come out. It's not so much the sheer amount of albums that come out. It's the quality of the ones that have.
Yes,
and the level of innovation that we've seen this year is crazy. It really is.
Yeah, innovation, that's a good one. Like I look at 1984 almost like I won't reference any band, but it's almost like the middle bit. It's like the think of it like a sandwich. The top bit of the bread is the raw part of a band's career or albums, and the bottom one is the polished. So let's say, for example, use Metallica as an example. The middle one is like the middle between raw and polished. It's sort of half and half. And 1984, I think, it is almost like built on a lot of people's first attempts of a debut album. Plenty of examples, but yeah, man. So just for our listeners as well, so just as a reminder to those tuning in, we are Daddy Hugh and Papa Ben. We are part of METALIDADS. We are based in Wales and a community of fathers who act as paternal and well-being support network for each other and discuss all things metal through diplomatic means and absolutely ridiculous metal memes. So please follow our YouTube channel if you're watching this on YouTube. And if you'd like to join a small army, then find us on Facebook by visiting www.facebook.com/groups and /METALIDADS. The only criteria you need to join the community if that you are a dad and you are a follower of any of the many genres of metal music. But however, Ben, if anyone wants to look at our YouTube channel and content, they're of course free to do so, aren't they?
Oh, by all means, and that's kind of this. Although this is an extension to the group that was set up, this is So this is more. This is much more focused around the metal content. It just happens to be hosted by members of the group as such more, but we will be doing videos based on the paternal side of things. But yeah, definitely. So you're into metal, this is the place to be.
Absolutely, and in the future, if you want to know how to get your kids to sleep, this will be the place to be, because both yourself and myself have had troubles the past couple of nights.
Yeah, from completely opposite ends of the spectrum, really. I'm coming at this from a brand new parent with an 11.5-month-old suddenly deciding that sleep isn't for her. You're coming at this from what, a 2.5-year-old suddenly deciding that sleep isn't for her, and it's so and you've got a whole nother challenge coming literally round the corner for you.
A couple of weeks,
with a second one on
double
the way.
trouble, absolutely.
So you get to experience it all again. But should I tell you what, and this is maybe foreshadowing a future video. I'd love for maybe us to do a video, an interview style video, how we want to do it, of maybe your comparison, not of babies, because they're all different, but of your feelings and how you've tackled the two
absolutely, man.
I think there's some good content there.
If I could do a lot of this a second time, as in even if I can go back in time, I do a
Yeah.
lot of things differently. So yeah,
Oh
no,
yeah.
it's a good theme. It really is.
Yeah. And
So yeah,
my grandmother always said, she said to us when when we were expecting Millie, you want your third child first, because she said your first one you don't know what you're doing. She said
nah,
the second one never turns out like the first one. By the time
no.
you get to the third one, you've seen everything. Yeah. So she always says you should always have your third one first, which is nothing
My
truer,
wife
I
has
don't think.
my wife has always fancied three, and I think I'm coming into the idea now.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, so that's a nice future thing we'll be working on.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
so Ben, I think let's get started.
Let's
Tonight
do
we
it.
have not really in any particular order. So how the format works, you and I have chosen 5 albums, so a top 5 albums of stuff, ones we really like, ones we think that have contributed massively to, again, innovation,
Yeah.
to maybe styles going forward. And after we've discussed the top 5 in a bit more detail, we've both got a separate honorable mentions list of another
Yeah.
top 5, the ones we've just really personally enjoyed. So
Yeah. And
yeah, well, yeah,
I was going to say, and that's the thing, is this top 5 that we're first discussing, the one that we consider the top 5 for that year, isn't so much based on our favorites, even though, to be fair, a lot of them they aren't so much based on our favorites. It is based on, as Hugh said, it is based on the influence we feel they've had on the future of the genre, the legacy of those particular albums, and it does come to quality. At the end of the day, you can appreciate if something is a masterpiece without liking it. Do you see what I mean? Like, there's plenty of people out there who don't like Master of Puppets, but they would have to put it in the top 5 albums of that year. They'd have to, because of what it is. That, like, you can't argue it. It's just that is pretty much what it is. And that's what this top 5 is. And then the honorable mentions, like you said, it is our more of a preferential honorable 5. It should be good, should be fun. Let's do it.
Let's do this. Let's do this. So tonight we have in no particular order. Drum roll, please, Ben. Potentially not a massive surprise, potentially for some. I think that you might have secretly mentioned this in just as a teaser. So number 1, we're going for Ride the Lightning by Metallica.
We are indeed.
Of course. We also have A Fistful of Metal from Anthrax, or just Fistful of Metal by Anthrax. We have Sign of the Hammer by Manowar. And I'm cheating a little bit here for the 4th one. It's actually 2 bands. One was very short-lived, but then reformed as another band. So it's by effectively the same musicians, or the same spearheaded musician. So number 4, we've got Celtic Frost / Hellhammer. So Morbid Tales by Celtic Frost / Apocalyptic Raids by Hellhammer. And then finally we have Rising Force by Yngwie Malmsteen. So if anybody is unfamiliar with these albums, then no need to worry. A lot of these we've only heard for the first time recently. So we'll give you an insight. You can feel free to listen to them at a later date, whether you like what we have to say about them or not. We've tried to choose a sort of a mix of different styles of metal where possible in this list. And remember, this is down really to, again, personal choice on albums we thought that have contributed greatly. So if we haven't included maybe your favorite album or band sort of by the end of today's session, then please contribute in the comments, and we may even in the future, Ben, do a part 2 of 1984, because again, there's so many good albums that came out this year as major releases and debuts, etc. So we want to obviously, you want to fairly credit all those that contributed to different movements or different style of music. So Ben, neither yourself nor I are heavy metal experts or historians, but we're just avid fans who want to share our enthusiasm and help you, the listeners, expand your listening. And that's really what this podcast has actually done to our listening. I've never ever listened to so many albums in such a short amount of time than preparing for tonight's show, and it's been awesome. It really has.
I don't think I've listened to so many albums all the way through as I have, because usually and I'm don't as if I'm an old man, I'm not quite 30. I'm 30 in a couple of months, but I'm at that stage in life, let's big quotation marks there, where I actually I don't like up until this point, you'd get an album, you'd listen to all the songs, and then you'd be like, I'm gonna. So every time that album's on, I'd be like, oh yeah, I'll skip that song because it's not so good. I'll listen, like, and that's fine. That's fine listening. If that's how if you want to listen to music that way, there's nothing wrong with it. If you want to listen to the first 10 seconds of every song, if that's the way you like to do it, that's absolutely fine. But for me, I'm kind of at a stage now where I like a book. I suppose I enjoy listening to a whole album. And I've really only discovered that since we've started doing Rockerspective, because we started off with our first episode, which was 1990, we covered. And that was the first time I've sat down and studied albums, and not in a critical sense, in the terms of we're not writing there making these like critical reviews. It's just study them to form an opinion. And I've realized actually, like, I think that's how I like listening to music now. I prefer just to stick an album on, and it doesn't matter if there's songs on there that you're not quite as avid about, because providing the album in general is good, they all make sense. Like, yeah, there's a reason why that album is set out the way it is, even with the songs in the middle. And actually, this will be a point that we talk about with Ride the Lightning. Like, sometimes you need a weaker song to cleanse your palate. It sounds weird, but you kind of do. And we'll get onto that with Ride the Lightning. But yeah, so my listening habit has totally changed since doing this, for the better. How I see it anyway. Really enjoyed it, and I'm going to enjoy it even more going forward.
Absolutely, man. It's the same with me. Like, there's a lot of styles of metal it would hurt my ears to listen to if it's depending on the band or the style, etc. But yeah, I've actually broken through that brick wall type of thing, and now I've listened to an entire album knowing that it's not my favorite type of metal or music, but I'll listen to it with fresh ears, and that's something I probably wouldn't have been able to do up until recently. But I've had a lot of DIY to do and a lot of painting and a lot of music to get through. So I thought, well, this is the best time, really. So here we go. So let's just get to it. So number one, we'll start with Ride the Lightning. I don't know if you want me to go first, but definitely for myself. And another thing you and I have in common, we're both bass players. We both like bass guitar. For me, this has been the most nostalgic album, as I learned to play metal bass pretty much along to this album. And it's not a secret, but I'll start by saying that this album is actually my favorite album of all time. So I don't even want to overanalyze the songs too much, because I think they speak for themselves, really. So what have you got to say just to start, Ben?
Well, I was going to say, funnily enough, I think we could do an entire episode just talking about this album. We could, yes. And I'm not against just putting dropping this one on you. I'm not against potentially doing like a future spin-off episodes of deep dives into specific albums and actually like.
Well, again, we will be doing the Game Changers series at one point, hopefully the next few months. So we'll choose an album or two, depending on how much time we have, and we can go into a lot more detail on the riffage, the the influence and everything. So yeah, that'll be a great idea. Absolutely. And you said,
yeah. So with Ride the Lightning for me, I'm trying to think. When I discovered it, it was quite early on in my kind of metal listening. My listening kind of started in the early 2000s.
Snap.
So not listening to it obviously when it first came in '84. I wasn't even close to being born then. I was born in '91. But yeah, I mean, this has had, in terms of influence on what I've wanted to do playing bass, this is probably single-handedly the most influential album for me. Cool. And I think we potentially are going, like, I absolutely don't mind it, but just as a pre-warning, I guess, to people listening, is like this may come across as we're about to do a lot of ass kissing of Cliff Burton.
Yes,
but there's a reason for it. We're not doing it for the sake of it. There's a reason why. I think me and you both can agree that we would probably say he's the greatest metal bass player
These
rules
again.
sign,
He's if I
right
could have
up
a
there.
one, yeah, if I could have a
Yeah,
one-to-one with someone who's not with us anymore,
it'd be
who's
him.
metal, it'll be him
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
his influence on and that's the thing. He was one of those. I work in the background. Doesn't need to be super like both in the music and everything else. And we'll go into this. Like he was such a strong influence on the first three albums in physical,
Yes.
literally writing the songs. Without him, we wouldn't have had the songs that we've had. And this album, I think, again, Master of Puppets is considered probably their best album, considered by most. But I would say from if you're talking to this from a bass playing perspective, I would consider this the best of Cliff Burton of the albums.
That's a good statement. That's something I never really thought of, but it's hard to disagree with you, really.
Just
And
considering the songs that he's written on this album,
yeah,
he's
yeah,
been the lead writer on, is which we'll go into now. But yeah, no, this is an incredible album. I remember seeing the artwork for the first time, and it was just cool. It's just so cool. You just got
simple.
the lightning and and yeah, it's that one. It's so stuck in my mind. It's stuck in my mind again more than Master of Puppets. This one is really ingrained into me as such a cool one, and again, it's just incredibly influential from a lot of perspectives.
Well, it's interesting. Like, we'll listen to a lot of these albums, one we're familiar with, maybe sort of with fresh eyes. Weird enough, I hadn't actually sat down to listen to Ride the Lightning for quite a few years up until a couple of nights ago. Naughty me, but that's how it goes. Like life gets in the way. But one thing that's striked me, I suppose, I was looking at the duration of the songs. I didn't
Yeah.
realize how long the songs are on the album in respect of on average. So, for example, the shortest song is 4 minutes, 4 seconds or so.
Mm.
And you got then the final song, Call of Cthulhu, is about 8.5 minutes. So the average for these songs is sort of like 5.5.
Yeah.
Which obviously they're not a punk band, so they're not doing Misfits like 1 minute,
Yeah.
2 second songs. I understand that, but yeah, they could be considered quite long songs, and
Yeah.
this word gets thrown around so often it gets on my nerves in its misuse. But these are absolutely epic songs, and
Yeah.
epic in the respect of they go over it goes just beyond to be able to do songs for 5.5, 6 minutes,
Yeah.
etc.
And it's to keep up.
Yeah,
It's to keep up the intensity. The
yes,
it's to keep the epicness going. Like to keep that consistency going for that full time is impressive. It is
it is.
seriously impressive.
But it's interesting. Like, for example, arguably the most famous song on the album because it's had airplay on, the greatest air guitar album in the world, or the intro to the movie Zombieland. You know which one I'm talking about. It's For Whom the Bell Tolls.
Yeah.
That's probably the most famous song on the album, arguably.
Yeah.
And when you think of the song, you assume it's a short song because it doesn't actually repeat much.
It
But
does
that's
feel
five and a
very
half,
short.
but it's 5.5, almost 6 minutes.
Yeah.
I
Doesn't
didn't
feel it
realize
though.
because it's got the longest intro in the world, and it keeps building and building and building. And I think what I like about Bell Tolls, it's almost written without any songwriting rules, and those are the kind of songs I really like. Those are the ones that you write in your room when you're 14, 15, and you don't understand
Yeah.
music theory. You just do it because it sounds good, and that's why
Yeah.
Bell Tolls sticks out, because the intro, nothing really repeats. It goes on and on and on and on and on. It's got a weird middle eight between. It was a sort of weird middle transition between
It does.
first chorus and the first verse, which doesn't occur again. The outro comes out of nowhere. So it's a no rule song, but
No.
but yeah,
It shouldn't
you
make
think it's
sense.
short, but
Yeah.
again, it does. It shouldn't make sense, but it does.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's just it shouldn't. I mean, when you put it like that, it shouldn't work. If you're very theoretical, you would look at that, the composition of that song, and be like, this. If you gave a composer that song and they had never listened to Metallica, they'd never listened to that song before, and just went, here you go, this is, and gave him the music to it. There you go. Make sense of that. They would look at him and be like, it's an absolute mess. This doesn't make sense. Like, not to, again, I don't want to risk harping on about it, but Cliff wrote this song. He was the lead writer on this, and again, maybe it just goes to show his extended knowledge. It's just the sheer talent to writing songs that work. It doesn't matter, and he obviously didn't feel like he had to follow any rules. He just wrote what he wanted to write, and well, we got bells tolls for it. So
yeah, I mentioned this in another album on this list. I'm a big fan of bands where the bass player takes a major role in the writing and in the sound then. And again, I'm not going to mention them too much, but Iron Maiden are the example of
huge.
Steve Harris. And again, Steve Harris, he didn't really have an amazing music theory knowledge. He just had a great songwriting ability. He just knew what sounded good, and he was just extra confident in maybe the wrong notes he was doing, but didn't care. I think it sounds good. And I think Cliff had that element as well, even though his theory was probably very good because he had a lot of classical influence in his writing, which you can hear in like Orion and things from the fourth album, Justice for All, as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, you mentioned about intensity. Like, one thing that's really stuck in my mind, listen to it again and in headphones. I haven't listened to it with headphones for a long time. But the first 3 songs of the album, they just suck you in and they just pulverize you with this a heavy crushing guitar sound, combined with a bass guitar.
Yeah.
And then you get the Fade to Black intro, like the string sound. And then it's like that. You mentioned like a palate cleanser, not that Fade to Black isn't the weak song on the album, which is a palate cleanser, but it's a palate cleanser in the regards of the acoustic intro. And then you can sort of take a breath then and then appreciate something different. But those first 3 songs, Fight Fire with Fire, Ride the Lightning, and Bells, they pulverize you. And what I was thinking today, actually, something I wasn't going to mention originally, but they don't need to be blisteringly fast to be good thrash songs, do they? So like thrash,
Metallica are not. They're not they're not Slayer. Like they're a thrash band in, I don't want to say the weakest sense, but in the loosest sense. But they kind of are like they had Kill 'Em All was very thrashy, probably thanks to Dave. Like he basically wrote that album, and he's very, very thrashy. But then after and although he's got a few writing credits on this album, actually I think it's only one, and I think it was Cthulhu.
I think so.
Which actually goes to show his ability to write things like that is incredible.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, when you take Kill 'Em All away, which was written by someone who's not in the band anymore, and you just got the people who are left, they're not the most thrashy of thrash bands, are they?
No, well, in the 80s Metallica, absolutely agree with you. But it's elements, isn't it? And this is one thing we might talk about in a bit: is there a first thrash band, or was there a first heavy metal band, or do these basically people come together and contribute or throw elements of what thrash is now or metal is now into the pot? They give one element, whether if it's the speed, or if it's the lyrical themes, or the vocal style, or the drum sound, but they contributed loads to what is now thrash. You can't
oh god,
you can't take that away from them at all, because the albums speak for themselves, don't they?
Yeah, but but as you say, they don't have to be, and in fact in some cases I kind of feel like speed can potentially take away the heaviness of a song. Like the faster it becomes, the more into speed and power metal you kind of end up kind of pushing, and that's the thing is, and the perfect, well, I say perfect example of that, like I think it's arguable, and I actually have one song that we're going to be talking about later which I think competes with it on a par, at least. Maybe I prefer. Fight Fire with Fire is the best opening to any album ever, bar potentially one which I'll talk about later. But
I'll let you talk about
that. but Fight Fire with Fire is like, it doesn't start again, like it doesn't start off super thrashy. It's
No.
the
You're thinking,
what instrument
the
is
hell
that?
this?
Yeah, what instrument is that?
Do you know what? Yeah, we need to look at that. I used to be able to play it loosely on the bass guitar. To me, it sounds like a harpsichord or
Mm,
potentially a guitar with a harpsichord effect on the
yeah,
pedal potentially.
there's something going on there, and it's
Yeah,
just super bram bram bram.
yeah, very simple.
It's nothing. It's yeah, it's super simple, and then all of a sudden that kind of fades out, and then it just kicks you in the nuts, doesn't it?
Yeah,
It just
it does kick you in the nuts.
no pissing around. It kicks you in the nuts, and it basically doesn't stop there for the rest of the song.
No.
And you're right, it pulverizes you. It's just, oh Jesus Christ! Like you kind of
You
like
can't help but just I was headbanging to myself and doing a bass face.
the bass. You know what?
Yeah, bass face.
I pulled a lot of bass face, and I suddenly become conscious of the amount of bass face I was pulling listening to this album and that first song. Shall I tell you what I'd love to do? Is go back to. I'd love to go back to 1984, and just. I'd love to sit there with someone who's experiencing that album for the very first time. One, because it's always great to see a reaction, as YouTubers, as we discovered on YouTube, reaction videos are very strong. But crucially, can you imagine how that would have sounded when you've got nothing else like it? You've got nothing to compare it to, and then you put on Ride the Lightning for the first time, and you get that harpsichordy kind of entrance.
Yeah.
It fades out, and then bam! It just hits you with the thrash kicks in. Like that would that is a face melter.
It's a scary just sound, isn't it? It's aggressive. It's just the aggression and energy is. It just comes out of nowhere. I think every time I think of a song, or no, even if every time I hear the term in English, "Calm Before the Storm," I always think of the song of the intro. I can't think of anything else but this intro to the song when someone says "Calm Before the Storm," because that's a perfect example of it, musically speaking. Anyway, so just to go maybe to something you teased upon earlier in regard, you said the word palate cleanser. So a lot of people would sometimes say this is Metallica's best album, but there's one song that potentially holds it back. And you said palate cleanser, and I mentioned it's the song "Escape," which is track 6 on the album, which is wedged between "Trapped Under Ice" and "Creeping Death," of course.
Yeah.
But I've always defended this song because even though the story goes, I think they needed another song to go on the album, and they wanted to put something in that's a bit more radio friendly. I think so. I think they wanted to have a song a bit more radio friendly to try and potentially even promote this album before it was released or upon its release. I think so. So it's obviously a lot slower. It is the slowest. Actually, I don't know if it's the slowest one because "For Whom the Bell Tolls" is quite slow, but it's a lot more major in its chorus, for example. But the song does absolutely what it needs to do on the album, because then you've got you've got Creeping Death.
Creeping Death.
The intro to Creeping Death comes in, and then you think, shit, because obviously Escape, it's a fade out outro, just like the end of For Whom the Bell Tolls. But again, you got the slow pace. You know, it's sort of you've let your guard down, I suppose so, and then that sound of that fat E string, and then it just wow, and then you're back again. So I think Escape, I think, is a brilliant song because it does. It doesn't need to, maybe as an individual song it doesn't need to, but in its placing as track 6 in Ride the Lightning, it makes Ride the Lightning a brilliant album. I think so. That's sort of my take on it anyway.
And that's the thing. That song wasn't crafted as such. It was engineered to do a job. So the same level of heart may have not gone into it. It was more of a contractual obligation. But I mean, it's not a bad song. That's the thing.
No, really.
It's not a bad song. It's just
there's really great riffs in it.
Yeah, it's just when you compare it to what's around it, that's where it falls down. But like you said, and I never thought about it. It was only when you mentioned that to me the other day, I thought, oh, actually, yeah, you're right. Because I wrote, I got notes. I wrote notes for all these albums, and the one thing I actually wrote, and I kind of never thought, I just said Escape is the weak song on this album.
It's the
And
black
then
sheep.
yeah, but then when you said that, I thought, yeah, you know what, like that has, I almost want to say it's been purposely written to be not as good. Like I almost, it almost
I know
feels
what
like
you mean, absolutely.
yeah, it literally, they just said we need to write a palette cleanser. There we go, words. Just yeah, and that's what they've done. They've purposely, it feels like they have kind of purposely written a song that is designed to do that. You know,
Absolutely.
And now that, and again, this is the beauty of listening to an album in full, and like just listening to the greatest hits, which ironically on Ride the Lightning would be everything but that song, like if you're just listening to it. But and because this is where some, like you said, sometimes the weaker songs, I'm not even going to say bad songs because it's not a bad song, it's just the weaker songs, once you listen to the album in its whole, it makes perfect sense as to why it's there. And like you said, for that reason, it's a great song, and it's the perfect song for that. On the note of palette cleanser, just want to kind of segue that. Just want to quickly talk about a song that pops up two or three behind it, which is Fade to Black. I would say that in its own sense, that's a palette cleanser, but in a, like, that's not a design, that wasn't its designed kind of thing. It's just it was the way it happened to be written. Like, I've always maintained that I think Fade to Black is probably one of the most atmospheric and emotional songs I think I've ever listened to. It's the one song, like, there's not many that kind of do it, but it's definitely one song that of very few that actually moves me emotionally. The point where you listen to it and you kind of, it's I've done it a few times where I've listened to the album, I've got to Fade to Black, because and it's a corner, it's kind of like it's a checkpoint in the album. You've just been like, the album's kicked the shit out of you up to this point, you know. And all of a sudden someone's come to give you a big warm hug. Do you know what I mean? And there's
no, absolutely,
a big warm sad hug, but it's a big warm hug either way. And you just but there's times where Fade to Black ends and I got to hit pause before I carry on, and I just think I need to like collect myself,
collect your thoughts.
Okay, and then obviously we can move on.
The lyrics, it's a very much song about you know, it's effectively about suicide to an extent, really, but being sad of life. It's so lyrically it's obviously very emotional piece. But
it's one of the most beautifully written songs as well, in musically, in terms of that intro. You know, with the it's an acoustic, I assume, guitar, and then like the way it ends, it's a kind of a solo that kind of fades off. And it's just, overall, I don't know how you feel about it, but it is just one of the most beautifully written songs. And I just
well, again, you can have half an hour just discussing this song. I think so. For you, I wasn't really going to talk about Fade to Black, to be honest, but just my thoughts, really. There's a couple of things, really. I think this song encompasses why I think Ride the Lightning is such a popular album, and Metallica were such a brilliant band in this era. They were the best at mixing heavy with melodic, and that is what Cliff especially brought to the table. Was you can literally walk the line between the both, and I don't think there's as many songs better than Fade to Black that can do it. And in the song itself, again, if you know, when you listen to it on headphones again, just the sound engineering of that acoustic guitar, either the intro riff in B minor, for those who study music theory or play a guitar, to then the verse riff, just the sound of the guitar is just it takes you completely away from metal, almost makes you think you listen to some type of Hispanic folk music
Mm.
somewhere, and then you go, "Get the end to set me free" comes in, and they whoa, and
Yeah.
then that comes in. Yeah, it just and then obviously the end, as you mentioned there. What I like about the ending, again, it just goes on. Again, you don't need music theory again. Again, it goes out the window. The song completely changes direction, and it doesn't repeat back to say the
Nope.
chorus or the verse again. It just carries on.
Mm.
And when Kirk Hammett starts, goes off and one on the neck on the guitar, the solo just keeps going up a notch, up a notch, up a
Yeah.
notch, and so does Cliff, and so does James, and so does Lars. And then it fades and it fades, but it just the intensity goes up and up and up and up.
Yeah.
And even when
So,
it goes quiet, you can still feel the intensity
yeah.
carrying on in the background. It's almost like
I,
a very poetic way to end.
I was going to say, without getting super deep into this, but could you say that it was musically interpreting what's the the feeling of somebody potentially thinking about ending their own life, in terms of that adrenaline build? Do you know what I mean? You've got that build up of adrenaline, and then that sudden ending is it, if you see what I mean. But do you see what I mean? Because the song drains away.
Yeah. So does the song match the lyrical theme and the emotion behind the lyrics? I've never thought about it at all until now, but I think a big fat yes. It's probably been crafted in the studio to replicate that. I'd say so.
And
and
musically,
it does it really well.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is it's one of those songs that you could listen to without lyrics and be like, this is a sad song, or this is a song about something heavy, and I say feel sad listening to it. That almost is not like off-putting, and that's not what I'm aiming to do, because it's a beautiful song in its own right. It's just you've got to be prepared to listen to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
But listen, man, we could talk about this album forever, honestly. But maybe we'll think about wrapping this up, just so we can get because we've got a lot to get through.
We do.
But like I said, I knew this was going to happen. We're going to talk about one song and think, oh yeah, there's that point, that point. That's what Ride the Lightning does. But I don't think we'll talk about every other album to this probably extent. But one thing I want to end on, I suppose, maybe just a bit of inject a bit of humour back into it. I suppose, not to say you've dragged the tone down, Ben, but anyway. But finding a favorite song on this album is incredibly difficult.
Very.
But thinking long and hard about it, I think the song that leaves the biggest impact on me, unusually, is the one that has no singing. To me, my favorite song is probably Call of Cthulhu, the final song, which is, again, just so everyone, it's an instrumental. It's 8.5 minutes long. Again, something I told you yesterday, I think. So it makes me imagine one running through some type of Aztec jungle towards a temple with a monster chasing after you through the trees, and the monster is represented by the sound of Cliff Burton's wah wah bass pedal sounds.
Yeah.
That's every time I hear the song, I can just picture that really specific scene, and it's got this very beautiful impressionist thing about it. But that's the feeling I get all the time.
I think, from memory, I want to say that's how I was introduced to the album. So I say my early Metallica listening started off with somebody buying me this Some Kind of Monster EP. Then somebody bought me Kill 'Em All, and I was like 12 when I first listened to that, and I was like, whoa. Anyway, I then, at whatever age, it would have been 12, 13, whatever it was, I listened to S&M. And is it the first, or it's, I can't remember if it's towards the beginning or towards it. Anyway, I was just listening to it, and Call of Cthulhu came on, and it was so epic.
Excuse me.
And it still is. It is so unbelievably epic. The with the symphony as well, and it just blew me. I was like, "What the hell is this?" I did not know. So I looked at the album thing, and it was called, and he said Call of Cthulhu. So I googled it, or whatever I'd done back when I was 12, 13 on AOL.
I had
searched,
that as well.
Yeah, searched it and found that it was on the album Ride the Lightning. So I was like, oh, okay. And that was how I discovered. So it was Call of Cthulhu, which helped me discover that album, I think.
That's cool information.
Yeah, and it's just it's again, you know, the word is overused, but it is epic. Everything about it is epic, and it again, I don't know. Well, again, Dave had I think he had the main writing credits on this, which, you know, puts things into perspective, I guess. But it really feels like that was written with a symphony in mind.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point.
Like it doesn't feel like it was written just for those four guys to. Sounds like it was written with the idea that a symphony could play that.
Especially the outro. The
outro is insane.
Why I love the song.
Yeah,
and it's literally the best way to finish an album. Again, it's such an emotional ending. Again, just the again symphonic. You could say that the symphonic sound in the drums. It sounds like a timpani.
And I think it's quite rare. Potentially, I'm trying to think of other albums. Like off the top of my head, I can't. To have what you can consider by many, and quite rightly so, the best intro to any album, and on the same album have the best outro to any album. I don't think there's many albums I could say could hold
that's
that.
That's a perfect sandwich right there, isn't there?
Yeah.
It really is an album sandwich.
Yeah. And if you consider everything that goes on in the middle of that, there is no better way to end that album.
You know, talking about ending, I think that's a good start, really, to tonight's Rockerspective episode 2 on our top 5 albums from 1984. So that was the first one, and that was, of course, Ride the Lightning by Metallica. So if you're listening to this and you're new to metal, if you want to sort of taste what thrash metal is, or elements of thrash metal, you know, Ride the Lightning, that's your album. For me, personally, it's my favorite album of all time, and again, I gave myself a slap on the wrist earlier because I probably haven't listened to it for quite a few years, especially with headphones, as I did a couple of nights ago. But it's an emotional ride from start to finish. Even the palate cleanser, it's amazing. So next, from Ride the Lightning to number 2, we've got Fistful of Metal from Anthrax. So, as Ben, again, as a segue, Ben was saying in the previous album, Ride the Lightning, as amazing as the song Fight Fire with Fire is, which is the intro for Metallica's Ride the Lightning album, Ben reckons there's another song which is a candidate for a song that might be an even better opening song from any album from 1984. So, Ben, tell us a bit more.
So, and maybe my opinion of that is based on the fact that I don't think I've heard this album before. And again, it's one of those, like, you hear it for the first time and it's like, poor geez Louise, like that's just kicked me right in the throat.
Like me and Painkiller.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Painkiller. Wow.
And that's the song Death Rider. It's the first song, and again, it approaches the way it does it in a different way. Fight Fire with Fire lulled you into a false sense of security and then kicked you while you weren't looking. This one just comes at you swinging, you know.
Are you saying it gives you a fistful of metal upon first listen?
I would say that, yes. it's just like, it sets the tone for the album. It's just bang, straight in, fast, aggressive, but epic. It's not ridiculous. It's not like over the top or stupid. It's just
fun.
It's fun. Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. It's very, very fun. But Death Rider, yeah, it's just yeah, I mean, Fight Fire with Fire is definitely more dynamic what it's doing. This is just I'm just gonna, you know what this thing's gonna do to you from the get-go. There's no mucking around. Possibly because it's worth noting that Fistful of Metal is Anthrax's debut album.
Yes, of course.
So it makes you think that, you know, if you're writing a debut album, the first song on that first album is, you've got to make it good. You've got to make it like, and this packs a punch.
Absolutely.
It's a hell of a song. You know, even I'll admit, potentially, you know, slightly over the top, saying it's better than Fight Fire with Fire, but I'm coming at it from, this is the first time I've heard this, where Fight Fire with Fire 500 times, you know. And as a first impression, holy hell, it's an amazing first impression.
I'm in the same boat as you, actually. I'd never listened to this album until this year. I think I was in the garden doing something and had the phone on my pocket. And I thought, what? Have I never heard this song before? Or yeah. So maybe just a reminder for maybe people who are getting into metal or just unfamiliar with the timeline, I suppose. So
Yeah.
people may be familiar with the term in thrash metal, or specifically the 80s, something called the Big Four. So the Big Four would be Metallica, Anthrax, Megadeth, and Slayer. So just a reminder, before 1984, Slayer and Metallica were the only ones of those four that had also released a debut album. So 1983, you had Show No Mercy from Slayer and Kill 'Em All by Metallica.
Yeah.
Now, the third band of the four, Anthrax, releasing their debut in this year, 1984.
Yeah.
So just anyway, we just want to just put that point.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you know much about the story, Ben, about the mix of this album? There was an article I read about on Loudwire about when they made this album in 1984. Are you familiar with the backstory at all?
I am not, and I'd be very interested to hear it.
Well, I think from what I read, I think they flew to New York, I think, to get this album done, and something like the studio they're supposed to do it in was either closed or closed down or something like that. So they had to find a studio quite quickly who were free and one that was reasonably affordable. So I think they went for one which was near enough on the boundary of what they could afford. I think it was Pyramid Studios or Pyramid Labels. The name escapes me. So they opted to have a producer who wasn't normally a producer, but he had roughly the skills.
Yeah.
But wasn't mentally experienced doing it. So they went with him anyway. But this dude, bless him, he was a drummer. So he obviously didn't have a clue about mixing. I'm just joking, that's a joke. Because that was actually almost like a quote by one of the, I think the guitarist, Scott Ian, I think so, or an angle anyway. So if you listen to this album and the mix, you'll hear the drums very clearly, but not so much the guitar as much as you'd expect. And from what the retrospect, Scott Ian, the guitarist, says, is because the drummer was obviously trying to showcase what he knew more about, which was the percussive instrument of the drums. But as a band, they were not happy with this mix, and they actually didn't have enough money to get it remixed afterwards, unfortunately. So they I think they've said they've always wanted to try and get this remastered, but haven't got around to it yet. So that's one of the stories I read from the article, is how they got around to recording it. And they actually did it in a very short amount of time, because they went into it basically with the entire album. They'd rehearsed it. They were tight as hell with all your songs. They didn't come up with anything on the spot. So it was quite a simple get it done type of thing. And it was done with reasonable ease, but it was the recording, I think, or the mix, I think, that they reckon let the album down. So when they look back at it, Scott Ian specifically, from what I read, he looks back at the songs with a great deal of like happiness and nostalgia, because they think the songs are great, but the recordings and the album is not. That's the angle from Anthrax anyway.
That's interesting, actually. It's funny. Scott Ian is the only original member of the band. Everyone else had come either a year or two later, so he's the only one who's featured on that. He's the only one who's still in the band that featured on that debut album. And yeah, you know what? Now that you said that, it makes a lot of sense, because again, the thing with Death Rider that I noticed when I first heard it was, it starts off with the guitar, and then when the drums kick in, the drums just flood everything.
Yeah.
And it's that double pedal. That's what you hear as soon as it kicks in. It just comes out of nowhere, and it floods everything out. But it makes a lot of sense. But the thing I always think is I actually thought it sounded quite good. I thought the album sounded quite good.
Yeah, again, me too. Actually, I still you can still hear everything, but again, Scott Ian's probably thinking again from the angle of a guitarist. He wants to hear more guitar and less drums. So it depends really which angle you sit at.
It's all
I don't think it
perspective.
detracted from the song or the riffage. I think you can still hear it.
Yes,
Clearly, but that's definitely a piece of history that, from the band's point of view, that they acknowledge is that they're not happy with the mix. Now I know you and I have. Sorry, crack on.
Just gonna say, I'd love to hear a remix of this album, proper like remix, because I mean, I'm not familiar with how songs would have been recorded back in 1984. Would digital be a thing back then? I guess it wouldn't. It would still be all
analog. It'll still be analog.
It'd still be all analog. So I think there's that added complication.
Yeah.
Because you're taking physical tapes that original tapes that need to be converted into digital and then remastered. It's a big thing. I mean, Metallica remastered the first 4 of their albums, but they only did that a few years ago.
When the technology caught up with the objective, I suppose.
Yeah, and usually I think remasters like that cost. I don't think they're super cheap because again, you've got that conversion of you got to take those original tapes. You've got to have the original tapes. Then you've got to convert them to a digital thing, and then they've got to be fixed up. And there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. So I'd love to hear it though. I would love to see what they could do in 2021, 2022, whenever they're going to plan. Hopefully, they eventually get to do it.
Man.
It'd be really good.
Anthrax are the only one of the big 4 I've never seen live. I've been lucky enough to see Metallica, I think 3 times, Slayer once, Megadeth once. Megadeth was actually by accident because I actually wanted to see the headliner, and Megadeth happened to be awesomely on the bill. But so I really would now, after hearing this album and a lot more of their albums, sort of listening, you and I have been doing over the past months. I'd love to see Anthrax live. I really would.
Yeah, and there's a couple of songs they do that don't feature on the albums we've listened to so far. They feature on Among the Living, I think.
Yes.
Where they are proper mosh pit starters. And
You've sent me quite a few YouTube videos of live footage of those
Indians.
pits. And,
they're pretty epic. Yeah, I'd love to experience that live. I think that'd be amazing. I'm looking forward to doing 1986 as well, actually, so we can cover that album. It's very good.
Sorry, I've only got 2 other things really to say about this album. You reminded me of a third. I find it's very unusual that the lead singer, the current lead singer, I think, or the most recognized lead singer for Anthrax, you call him Native American, but you could call it, the correct term now is First Peoples. But it's weird that someone who's Native American, who doesn't like the word to be called Indians, sing-song Indians.
Yes,
as a title. I always thought that was a bit okay. If you're happy with it, I suppose. But
maybe it just worked lyrically. In the same way that Tom Araya is a hardcore Catholic, and he's the lead singer of Slayer. If it works musically and lyrically, then it's art. That's all. It can
you're right. It's like I remember Tom Araya of Slayer saying, when they wrote "God Hates Us All" in 2001. I know he promised not to time travel with too many albums, but people like, are you against Christianity and stuff? No, I'm a proper churchgoer. I just, God Hates Us All is a fucking cool thing to hear a room full of people shouting out aggressively. Yeah. I'm the lead singer of a metal band, so
why not?
Go figure.
Yeah, exactly.
I think something I mentioned to you a while ago, and I think you and I agreed on this. And again, this is in the article I read at loudwire.com. This album has an escape, like the Metallica song from Ride the Lightning, but this one doesn't do what it needs. Escape did.
This is very. So I mean, I'll let you go on about it because I've definitely got some opinions on this one, but this is it doesn't fit. There's no purpose at all.
No. Or if there is, it's in the wrong place, as you mentioned. So basically, from what I gather, in 1983, 1984, especially on local local airplays. A lot of metal bands were getting a lot of airplay by playing a lot of covers of other bands. So I'll give you an example. In 1983, I think so, the band Quiet Riot released the song "Come On Feel the Noise," which is famously by the band Slade from the UK,
Mm.
and that had a lot of airplay that year. So a lot of metal bands were sort of, who, again, from 1983, 1984, 1985, would have normally a cover song on the album, and it's normally at the end. But track
Yes.
3 in Fistful of Metal is "I'm 18" by Alice Cooper. And the bands still argue years later whose effing idea it was to have this particular song, or nothing. Maybe nothing wrong with having a cover potentially at track 3, but maybe something a bit more upbeat, because this song didn't show what the band were about. It was really
Oh,
stylistically a complete. I don't know. It was a massive underwhelmment when you got the first 2 tracks are cracking
yeah.
in Fistful of Metal as the rest, but then track 3 happens and it just pulls the rug from under you, and it becomes an incredibly boring,
Yeah, it does.
mediocre cover version of a song, and then the album starts again. I just thought, why is this here? If
Yeah.
it's going to be anywhere and it's going to detract from the album, whack it on right at the end.
Yeah.
So yeah, what do you say about that?
Well, yeah. Well, that's what I was going to say. First of all, any cover song should be at the end of an album, and it should be it should have no consequence to the rest of the album. It should be just a bonus added feature. It shouldn't be like it should be at the end of the album, but it's not the outro. You should have the album, the outro to that album, and then if you want to stick a cover at the very end, it's a bonus added feature. It's no more than that. But I kind of feel like this was put in there to try and be a part of the album, and it's just it's yeah, no, it's really like I remember I listened to this only a week and a half ago, whatever it was, and I had this on in the car, and I'd listened to Death Rider, which like is a face melter. Then you got Metal Madness or something.
Metal Thrashing Mad.
That's the one. Metal Thrashing Mad. And again, it's just face melter. It's really like again, it's one of those songs that you dig into and just really get your teeth stuck in. And then this played, and it's just there's a couple of ways to do covers, and this isn't even, if you're going to do a cover of a song that isn't this like similar stylistically to you go one of two ways. You either try and do a similar version to the original, or you try and do like a proper original version. Like the best way I can describe that is like, and I think most people like it, but like Killswitch Engage's version of Holy Diver is their
How
version.
did I know you were going to say that? How did I know?
That is their version. You know,
yes.
They've made it their own, and it's awesome in its own way. But
that is a perfect example of
a
band, adding their stamp onto something, and
Machine Head.
Oh god, yeah, Machine Head, like Battery, of course,
Battery and Hallowed Be Thy Name.
Yeah,
you listen to those two, and you could almost be like, God, these are actual songs they've written. It's very you do it in your style, and this hasn't been done in their style. Like I say, you've got all that insane face melting action, and then they try and do a literal covers band version of a song that's nothing even close to their style, and it's really really jarring, and just it. I don't want to say can one song ruin an album. I personally don't think so, but it like
and
this
for the record, neither you or I, as far as I know, hate Alice Cooper. I think Alice Cooper is awesome, and at the time when the song was released as a singular song, it's fine. It's a great song, but a time and a place, in context,
yes,
this stands out like excuse the pun, a piss hole in a snow blizzard. It really does.
Exactly, it does.
Absolutely stands out.
Yeah, it's not favourable. And going back to the way I listen to albums, this is actually one song I'd skip because it has no consequence on the rest of the album. Yeah.
I actually have bought for my wife and I at Christmas this year one of those. Well, I think you got one as well. Is it a Google Nest, which is like an Alexa or a
Yeah, I've got
an
an
Amazon
Alexa as
Echo?
well.
Oh, you
Yeah.
got a course, yeah. So, yeah, I had Fistful of Metal on the other day when I was probably cooking or washing dishes, and yeah, after this metal thrashing mad, this came on, and I said, "Hey Google, skip."
Yep. Yeah.
That's adorable, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, I just said, "Hey Google," and she responded. It's amazing how
Yeah.
quick she is.
Yeah.
Anyway, I haven't got much else to say besides. Do you think, Ben, that Fistful of Metal as a debut album, do you think it's one of the best thrash debuts of this era?
Yes. I think so, and I'd like to say as well. Obviously, this had the original vocalist Neil Turbin, I believe his name
Turbin,
was.
yeah,
And he's
brilliant.
hell of a
I'm a
voice.
yes,
Holy
I'm a big fan of that
shit!
style. You know, I'm a
Yeah,
big Judas Priest fan, so the screeching, high pitch stuff I'm a big fan of, as I
that
like my symphonic power metal. But it's
yeah,
brilliant.
and
There's
that
range, man. Oof.
yeah, and that's what I was gonna say is his range is insane.
Mm.
And yeah, I think 1984 is definitely a year that was been heavily influenced by Judas Priest, because
Yeah,
there's a lot of
definitely.
bands with that style of singing, and they're all awesome. But I gotta say, like his range and yeah, he really does make this album like something even more special.
Sinister, I think so
Yeah,
sometimes as
definitely.
well.
And then all of a sudden he'll just reach up for a high, and
Yeah,
and you're like, oh, geez, like that's you just. Oh, you just got to take a moment to appreciate it. It's very, yeah, he's very, very cool. But yeah, no, definitely I'd say if you're talking about thrash debuts, there's there's not much better than this one, I don't think.
no, I agree with you. And again, we listen to a lot of these albums with fresh eyes and ears, and that's my conclusion. Again, excluding track 3, which we won't talk about ever again. Yeah, it's a cracking album, and it took me absolutely by surprise. So that's why I think. Again, this is we've been doing this top 5, and it's been changed. It's changed even last night, the night before our show,
It did.
because we've been doing so much listened to so many albums, we thought, that deserves to be there, that deserves to be there. That's why I think we need to do a part 2.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this definitely deserved to be in the top 5 of a mix between our favorites and most influential albums of this year, because it is a cracking debut album by Anthrax.
Yes.
So this is Fistful of Metal as our second one tonight we'll be discussing. And let's move swiftly on to number 3. So Ben, I've known this album for a long time. I know this is one you've only listened to as of recently, so I'm curious to think what you think about it. So we are now on to Sign of the Hammer by Manowar. And
Yeah.
Manowar, definitely 80s Manowar, I'm a huge fan of. I'll
Yeah.
tell you why shortly. So Ben, just you listen to it for the first time. What do you reckon to the Sign of the Hammer? What have you got to say?
Epic. I don't want to
Oof,
throw that word
yes.
too many. I
Yeah.
don't want to throw the term around too much, but yeah, very, very unique in how it sounds. And again, this comes down to a bass player led band writing a lot of the songs, influencing the sound. The actual bass he's using is very, very, very specific, very customized for what he wants to do. As you described it, it was a Rickenbacker body
Yeah, I think so.
with an elongated guitar neck.
Yeah, and with almost the width of, I think, of a standard electric
Yeah,
guitar. Because
but just extended.
yeah, so he instead of having a second guitarist to make the band sound heavy, he, from what I understand, Joey DeMayo, the bass player, was doing power chords, which a guitarist normally would do, with a distorted sound on the bass. And with the neck being smaller, you can almost play the bass guitar to a certain extent like a normal electric
Yeah,
guitar, as in the distancing is actually quite similar. So
yeah,
hence why I was allowed to go up and down, because normally bass guitar is a lot more physical. The
yeah,
strings are thicker, so to do power chords on normal bass guitar is quite difficult, especially if it's
yeah.
a really busy riff. But that, as you said, is very much a key to their sound, and nobody's ever sounded like Manowar,
No,
ever.
And it was
because of the
really
bass.
refreshing. It was really refreshing. I'd come off the back of listening to, can't remember what. It was a few other albums from 1984, and yeah, this is, I don't want to say curveball because that sounds negative, but yeah, this is a real change of pace, but in a good way.
Yeah.
But yeah, from the get go, it's epic straight away. Just everything about it, and I actually wrote on my notes. I said, "Epic, powerful, whole album." And I said, "There's a medieval feel to it."
Yes. Yeah.
It's very and again, maybe comes down to that bass sound. That bass sound is very, very treble heavy, very treble heavy, and it's very metallic.
That's a great, that is a great word to use, even though we're talking about metal albums. It does have that tinny sound, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it, yeah. So there's that like medieval feel, which adds to the kind of epic feeling of it, because it's that kind of it's very. This is grand metal.
Metal, yes.
I've labelled it myself. This is grand metal. It's very, very grand. Very epic. I can't remember the vocalist's name, but insane.
Eric Adams.
Insane. Just all over the place. Insane. Just up, down, left, right. Yeah. Very, very cool. And actually, I mean, say it took me by surprise. It did. I mean, I knew of Manowar. You had showed me years and years ago who Manowar was, and I'd listened to a couple of songs, potentially only one, which is actually on this album, and it's more of a, you probably showed me this out of this is what bass players could do if they want to, and then with Thunderpick.
Yes.
But listening through this album, again, it was one of those albums I listened to, and the time flew, absolutely flew. It's just very, very epic, every single song. But there's a definite story to every song. It feels like you're on a journey, and it's really it's really nice. And you do feel like you're on some kind of quest. You feel like you feel like you're on some form of quest, and it was really nice. And it was rounded off very nicely to if I to start, in order to start categorizing things, so I'm not placing things over the other. It's got the best outro song to any album with lyrics. I say that to keep Call of Cthulhu separate.
I'm glad you said that, because that's literally on my notes here. I think in our Metallidads Facebook group, I'm sure I actually put on a discussion point once. I think it was, what's your favorite
intro?
No, actually I haven't done that yet, and I think that's maybe a future topic I've written down. What's your favorite outro to an album? And this sticks in my mind, is Guyana, Cult of the Damned.
Oh yeah. It's I'll tell you what hit me with that song. It's weird that we're probably listening. I mean, we can analyze this, talk about the songs, whichever are. But this song especially, you kind of got it's very it's kind of like a bassy solo type of thing at the beginning, and then it gets into the music, and again, very grand in its sound, bum 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 bum, very, very grand, and then and there's some singing and lyrics, and then all of a sudden it kind of goes quiet for a minute, and it's that first time you hear him belt out Guyana, and it's just like, whoa, and it was one of those songs that all the hair on the back of my neck stood up. That first time he just went, it just all went a little bit quiet, and then all of a sudden you hear him belt out that first time Guyana, and I was like, whoa, and it was real, like, I'm feeling this.
This is a real,
such a good way.
This is the grand in the grand metal. It's very theatrical, isn't it?
Yeah, big time.
Very theatrical, almost operatic, changes to it.
These guys, if electric was a thing in Shakespeare's time, these guys would be playing in as like a halftime interval in between Shakespeare's plays. You could see it, couldn't you? I mean, I'll leave it up to you to maybe talk a bit more the what's the word, the in-depth side of things, because I've really come from this album from a very new perspective. The other thing I'd like to point out, which again, go into more detail, Thunderpick is insane. It's a bass
track
solo.
7, track 7 of 8.
And I simply wrote down in my notes, Thunderpick is pure wank, and I love it. because you just listen to it and you're just like you are literally playing that for the sake of it. But you know what?
Yeah.
It's wank and it deserves to be there, and it just sounds so
it's tasty.
cool.
It's tasty wank. It really is.
Musically speaking, it's tasty wank. Yes, love it.
But bass wise, again, there's wank and there's. I think Joey DeMeo is such an underrated bass player. A lot of people look down upon pick playing, trying to copy a guitarist, but
he made it cool.
He's incredibly original, and like Thunderpick, for example, from memory, like there isn't a great deal of information about Joey DeMeo and the gear he uses. It's very much like in Reddit and like forums and stuff. Like people, so-called experts, armchair referees, reckon they know the answer. But just for those who didn't know, Joey DeMeo, he was actually the bass technician for Black Sabbath on their 1980 tour, Heaven and Hell tour, where Ronnie James Dio joined Black Sabbath when Ozzy Osbourne had left. So his knowledge of bass came from that. So again, he customed his own bass guitar, and he's got a very wide range of bass sounds in a lot of these albums. And just in this album alone, Thunderpick is actually, I think, played on a piccolo bass. Piccolo bass is actually, it's basically bass, but the strings are, I think, an octave higher. So it almost makes it a guitar. It's still a type of bass guitar, but with piccolo strings. So that's why it has a very like, again, almost a medieval sound, because it's not a standard bass as you know it. It sounds almost like mandolin-ish to a certain extent. And then you've got the intro for, again, Guyana Cult of the Damned. He plays almost like flamenco. I think he almost has like an extension on his finger, and it just does some type of flamenco technique to do that slow intro where the lyrics come in. And then when the song kicks in, he'll use a pick and back into distorted bass again. So as a bass player, he's insanely underrated. But Manowar, I don't think, loads of bands couldn't contribute anymore in the 90s because they contributed so much in the 80s. That's all they could do. And if it's Metallica or Slayer, Venom, all these bands, etc., you can't go on contributing new, pioneering, innovative things forever, because other people do that in other styles, etc. But Manowar, after the 80s, I think they became almost quickly a parody of themselves. They sort of, like in the 80s, the whole, we are proper metal, death to all false metal. It was cool because it was like metal is here, metal is bad and going to kick your ass. But then when grunge was kicking in, that type of attitude to metal was looking a bit out of place and a bit too cheesy. So I think Manowar became a bit of a parody of themselves. But in the 80s, I just think, they contributed a lot to metal. Now, you and I were discussing an album, I think yesterday, of an album we actually took out of the top 5, which was Bathory. Now, you told me Bathory, who also released an album this year of the same name, Bathory, in 1984. You said they were the first official band to be classed as Viking metal.
They were. So after doing a bit of digging, it was their 5th album in 1990, which, again, it shows how easy it is for things to slip through the net. Obviously, we've already done 1990. And realistically, we probably should have talked about them because Viking metal is massive, and
huge.
Didn't completely under our radar. So maybe a part 2 for 1990 needs to come up as well.
Yeah.
But
great shout, man.
But they officially, their 5th album, I can't remember what it's called now. They were progressively getting that way. Their first album, which we'll go into detail in a bit, was very, very, very black metal. I mean, again, pioneered black metal basically, along with
absolutely
kind of Celtic Frost. Did the black metal, extreme metal thing, but then after that, their albums slowly started becoming less black metal and more of this Viking metal, and then till their 5th album in 1990 was officially, like, by many, it's officially the first Viking metal album.
So the reason I bring this up, because I think I said the other day, I'd like to think, like power metal, you could as power metal, you could trace it back to, arguably, you could say potentially Judas Priest and Rainbow. I
Yeah.
think so. Rainbow, especially. Rainbow released an album called Rising in 1976, but Priest also released an album called Sad Wings of Destiny, which I think equally helped a lot of power metal, but not quite as directly as Rising. But Sign of the Hammer, I like to think it's a very much an unofficial flame that was lit for Viking metal
Yeah.
of what, like,
Yes, no,
lyrical, like the
definitely.
damn thing is called Sign of the Hammer, which is based on Norse mythology, Thor's hammer.
There's a
You
song
got
called
Thor the
Thor.
Powerhead, of course.
Yeah.
Thor the Powerhead, again, lyrically, they sing a lot about Odin, or they did in the 80s, etc. But even melodically, the
Mm,
riffage, etc. You know, that could be on any Viking metal album now.
could be.
And
Yeah, definitely.
so I think for Viking metal, and Manowar are credited with leading the American or the US power metal movement, which then gave birth to symphonic power metal with bands like Helloween. Even Iron Maiden contributed to that, I think so as well. But
Yeah.
yeah, so Manowar took it up a notch, and even things like, Manowar have like choral backgrounds in the choruses, like in
Mm.
Guyana Cult of the Damned, like in Thor the Powerhead. Actually, I think so, and
Mountains.
yeah, mountains, exactly. So that's a staple in a lot of Viking metal choruses,
Mm.
is big chants, big choirs singing the main chorus lines, etc. So
Yeah.
yeah, again, I think this album is in this list because I think power metal definitely was a huge influence on power metal, the direct power metal, or then symphonic power metal as well. And I think the Viking metal, or even potentially what the Finns started doing then, calling it folk metal, potentially,
Oh,
might,
definitely.
even like in Germany, like bands like Blind Guardian. I'm sure Blind Guardian
Mm,
had a massive influence from Manowar, as did bands like Fintroll, who
yeah.
was singing Finnish as well. So yeah, so that's why I think this band's in
Mm,
here. And you mentioned about Eric Adams, the singer. Um, there's a reason, as a singer myself, um, as well as being a bass player. I think this is why I'm drawn towards Manowar and Judas Priest. Is the songs, if you've got the range, they're so fun to sing, because Eric
yeah.
in this band and Rob Halford in Judas Priest, they have written such excellent melody lines and lyric, and even if they've written the lyrics or not, but the vocal lines they've set in the composition, yeah, they're just tasty as fuck. And as you said, Eric just goes everywhere, up and down.
Yeah.
Like Guyana, for example, it starts with "We thank you, Reverend
Yeah.
Jim." No. Thank you for the Kool-Aid, Reverend Jim.
That's
Glad
it.
to
Yeah.
be behind the world of sin. Then at the end, he goes, "Mother, mother." It just
Yeah.
his range is everywhere. And
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm a massive fan of Eric Adams, and he, again, as a singer, again, majorly influential towards a lot of the metal singers that came after him. Again, especially power metal. Again, symphonic
Yeah.
power metal as well. So that's really all I've got to say about this album. I'll try and show you a funny story. I've got a Sign of the Hammer T-shirt in this house.
You
It's
do.
actually in the wash, but I bought it. I've been so lucky. I've seen Manowar twice, and the first time I saw them, it was in Birmingham. I was smashed out of my face drunk. I was in a pub in Birmingham called the Wellington, and I got drunk with a few of the metal fans, and they were drinking shorts as well as pints. And I went to the gig, and I was so drunk, I hardly remember the gig at all. But I bought a T-shirt, this T-shirt. In 2011, I paid £40 for a T-shirt, which is insane. In 2011, I was so drunk I thought, I'll have it. It looks amazing. But the T-shirt has lasted me almost 10 years. It's still almost as good as when I first bought it. So it was the best T-shirt purchase I've ever done in my entire life. But it cost me £40 in 2011. But I still have it. And weirdly enough, the year after that, because this was the first time Manowar had been allowed to play in the UK since 1991, because the whole "they play too loud" type of thing,
Yes.
they did another European tour, and where did they say they'd play? Cardiff University.
Yeah.
And where was I living? Cathays. For those who don't know,
Right.
Cathays
Right next to it.
right next to it. So
Student.
somehow the gods, Odin specifically, was looking down at me and said, "You can watch Manowar a 5-minute walk from your house. don't drink too much this time.
Yeah.
There you go. You owe me one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No more
Anyway,
£40 t-shirts
yeah,
though.
no more £40 t-shirts. Yeah. Anyway, moving swiftly onwards. So yeah, that was Sign of the Hammer, Manowar, a band and an album I specifically love. Now this is an interesting one because this is a band or a couple of bands technically, I didn't really know much about, and an album I couldn't name you one song by the band at all. But listening to these albums in retrospect again with fresh eyes, fresh ears, there's no doubt the amount of influence these albums or these bands had on the extreme metal side of things. Now, when we say extreme, it's a mix of, let's say, the big three: thrash, death, and black metal. So we're talking about Celtic Frost's Morbid Tales, but I've got Hellhammer in here as well. So the reason I've got Hellhammer, so basically Hellhammer from Switzerland were formed around 1982 with the lead singer guitarist Tom G. Warrior. Now, Hellhammer were very, very dark, but they were very, very looked down upon in the metal community, almost like they were sort of too extreme, too dark, and almost no one would really take them. No one would have them as gigs. No one would sign them or allow them, have them as they're under a label to release an album, etc. And I think it was
almost out of fear.
Yeah, out of fear because of, again, the lyrical content of what they were singing about as well. It was very, very dark. It was very much the occult, that type of thing. I think it was a label in Germany that took them on, and then they released in 1984, Apocalyptic Raids, which it's really, really dark. It's raw.
Very
of course,
raw.
it's very almost like demo-ish type of raw, but I feel we had to mention these two side by side because effectively it is the same outfit in the regards of it's still Tom G. Warrior, and him as an individual, I think, has got an insane, has contributed so much to then what came afterwards. I haven't got much to say about Apocalyptic Raids itself, besides just the atmosphere, I suppose, more than the sound is the atmosphere.
Very, very dark.
Oh, it's very, very dark.
Very raw. Yeah. And it, for all intents and purposes, it's an early demo of what Celtic Frost became. So, yeah. There's not a huge amount to say about it, I suppose, because it's more of just an EP rather than an album.
Yeah, it's 5 tracks, but it was redone, I think, last year or the year before with an extra 2 bonuses tracks added in, taking it, I think, to 7. So that's the version that's on Spotify. So we've obviously got on our page, and we with METALIDADS, a Spotify playlist we've been putting together.
We do.
So maybe we can put that underneath the YouTube channel towards the end once we've added a bit more from, say, Hellhammer and Celtic Frost.
I've added a fair amount from those actually. Anyway, so it's the link to our. So what we do with these episodes is we listen to all these albums. Obviously, we talk about them, but we listen to a lot more albums than what we're only talking about. Really a few albums compared to what we've actually listened to.
Absolutely.
I think I've listened to about 15 or 16 albums now. You've done 18, 19 albums.
Probably,
we can't talk about them all, but what we make the effort to do is we make a Spotify playlist from that year, which will be, it's a public playlist, which I'll be putting the link to, and even albums that we don't talk about, like every album we listen to, we will make an effort to put at least one, even if we don't like the album or don't like it, we will still try and find the best song, even just one song off that album, whatever the best one is, and get it on there, because it represents 1984. It doesn't matter, that's just personal taste. If we don't like it, someone else might, so we put it on there. So so all these bands we talk about, they have at least one, I think all these bands have got 2, 3, 4, and in Ride the Lightning's case, like 5 songs on this playlist, along with a lot of other bands which will also be on that list. So the link will be in the description for that. And again, stick it, if you want to discover what metal was like in 1984, I'd say that's a good starting place. You can discover, there's at least 15, 16, 17, 18 bands on that playlist. good way to check them out. So yeah, definitely, yeah. Sorry,
Yeah,
just
cool,
thought
man.
just thought I'd plug that before we move
No,
on.
no, absolutely. So, Ben, have you got like we'll mainly focus on Morbid Tales, but I think in the respect of the history,
Yeah,
it's important to mention Hellhammer because they again, it's a part of the metal history I only recently, literally this week, came across, and I feel I have to mention Hellhammer because
yeah.
it was the first version of Celtic Frost, so they can't go uncredited. So, um, Morbid Tales, what have you got to say? What have you got to say after listening to it a couple? I've listened to it, and I think now 2 or 3 times
Same
in
here.
the past month or so.
Yeah. So this is it fair to say this is a what's the term? A concept album? Is that the right term for it?
Is it a concept album?
I don't know. Is that that's what I was asking. Is
Concept
it a
album
fair
normally is when you're
subject matter?
talking about one singular subject matter or
Yeah.
an umbrella term. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So
quite possibly.
potentially, I'm gonna say that it's kind of got that kind of feel about it, but yeah. So this, I was very impressed with this. This is very there's like I heard that. I got to be honest, I didn't really know what the term extreme metal meant. I naively thought extreme metal must mean super hard, super fast, super aggressive. Almost like death metal potentially.
Yeah.
I just thought it was very like it was just like a sister to death metal, but like a twin sister almost. Very very naive to it, and what I've realized actually is black metal is more about the subject matter rather than how you musically put it across. And the thing I've noticed with Celtic Frost is they got a lot of groove. There's a lot of groove.
Yeah.
But just to maybe add some notes in, this band, the thing I really like about them, actually, Hellhammer, when they were Hellhammer, they did this as well. They've got one song which is like 9 minutes, and it's just a sound of a guy like sounding like he's dying. That's basically, there's no lyric to it. It's just that, and they do this not a lot. Well, yeah, a fair amount. They do that in this album. First things first, the intro to this album is right. Okay, just my note was intro. This is to Morbid Tales. Intro is fucking mad. And literally literally sounds like the souls of hell are screaming. It's that.
Well, I've got
crowds of.
I've
do you know
got
what I mean?
I've got written down. The intro's like a sound clip from the movie The Evil Dead.
Oh my god, yes, that is it. All you hear is this like but it sounds like
dual voice, the two-tone voice, isn't it?
And actually, I'd go just potentially, let's go a bit of music theory here. I think that was done in a dissonance as well. You listen to it, it's dissonant. So that those two notes are clashing on purpose, and it makes that super. It sounds like something from hell. It sounds like some kind of thing from hell being twisted and whatever. Proper, and it goes on for a couple. It's not like a 10-second thing. It's like 2 minutes, and the whole thing is that. It's just it's quite unsettling. It's very unsettling. And the thing I noticed as well for this album is this would have been like, again, considering the time, 1984. This would have been like super heavy. Yeah. Unbelievably heavy. Yeah. Also, something that I really, really appreciate with this, there's a lot of groove in this. Again, I really like the way they mix the mix in this in terms of it. A lot of these songs are very bass driven. Again,
very much,
which is nice. And again, the bass has got a nice sound to it. It's kind of that rounded thump rather than anything. It's the complete opposite to what Man of War are doing. It's very but the one thing, and this is so there's one thing I wish metal would have more of, other than cowbell. Obviously, that is the one thing everything needs more of, is cowbell.
Every time.
There's one more thing that these guys put a lot of that I want to see more in metal, and that's oofs and grunts.
Yes,
this album is
very
full.
Punk, actually. If anything, it's a lot of punk to it.
I want to see more, and it just there's, I can't remember the one song. Literally, the first thing you hear on the song, ooh, yeah, and there's like oof, and other than cowbell, I want to see more oofs and grunts.
Yeah.
And this album is full of them, and I can't help it. It made me smile every time. You just hear in these really dark lyrics, and all of a sudden you hear it, ooh, and
Hey man, I've just got a great idea. If neither of us are good at writing lyrics, we could start our own type of metal called gruntcore.
Gruntcore, oof, yeah, oof metal, yeah,
oof, yeah.
But yeah, but it was a really pleasant audible to have those little, because you really got the impression that he's feeling this,
Yeah.
just ooh, yeah. So yeah, but no, I was super impressed with this. I got to say, super impressed. It was I mean, lyrically very dark, very dark. The again, talking about like it's not even instrumental, it's just a soundbite. There's I say a song, I'm going to call it a track rather than a song, called Dance Macabre.
Dance Macabre, yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Like I'm, without trying to sound like I'm like a hard nut, I don't intimidate easily. I'm very calm and collected usually, and I don't guess, I could walk past, it could be 10 o'clock at night, it's pitch black, and I can walk back past a group of teens all with their hoods up, and I'm not gonna I won't cross the road. I'll just walk past them. I don't. I'm not that I'm saying that their purpose would be to intimidate, but a lot of people would cross the road, to avoid them. I wouldn't bother. I'm just like, stuff like that doesn't bother me. I do not intimidate easily, and that Dance Macabre was very unsettling. I was listening to it in the car on the way to work, and I do night shifts. It is not the thing you want to hear before you go into a night shift. It's very
unsettling.
It's very unsettling. I can't describe it. It's noises. It's not even words. It's just the noises. Very unsettling. Very scary. It's genuinely scary, and I'm finding it scary now in 2021. God knows how somebody would have taken that in 1984 when you've never heard anything like that before.
Do you know what that specific song, Dance Macabre, reminds me of? It reminds me of how, you're talking about hearing something for the first time and the impact it'll have on you because of the extremity of it. I can only imagine that's exactly what people felt when they heard the first track of Black Sabbath's first album, Black Sabbath. That bell.
Yes.
That sort of, and that flattened fifth sound. It's sort of that occult theme or sound in metal, and it's that, because that Kerry King from Slayer, he says that when he heard that the first time, he always found it scary, and he's written some of the darkest riffs ever known, and he still listens to that song and he just makes him squirm. Because the association and the nostalgia and the memory. So I think that's what I think when I heard Dance Macabre. It's how people must have felt 14 years earlier. But it is it is, again, it's that a cult theme, and I suppose that's where their contribution to black metal is, as was Venom as well. It's sort of the lyrical contribution to what eventually became a staple for that genre. But one thing I want to contribute as a point, and you might be able to hopefully agree with me on this, because I think you've heard more of these bands than I have, because it's a genre I've become unfamiliar with until recently. Now, it's the guitar tone Tom Mori has in Morbid Tales. So lyrically, I said black metal taken that staple, but then death metal took the guitar sound, because Cannibal Corpse, when I first heard when I heard Morbid Tales the first time, it was like listening to the first couple of Cannibal Corpse albums, as in the guitar, to me, the guitar that's the staple guitar sound for a lot of the early death metal bands. If it's Morbid Angel, or again Obituary, Death, Cannibal Corpse. So do you sort of feel that's quite a, can you see a similarity yourself? Or am I
no,
just
definitely. No, definitely. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I mean, and that's just maybe shows how influential Celtic Frost were. They've influenced directly, I guess you could say, and indirectly influenced death metal, black metal, and doom metal.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you said Doom because I was lucky enough to see Celtic Frost live in 2007. They played with a thrash band called Legion of the Damned,
Yeah.
and one of the greatest thrash bands of all time, Creator of Germany.
Yeah.
And to be honest, again, I didn't know anything about Celtic Frost. They actually bored the shit out of me because they were playing so much Doom
The
stuff, and
doom stuff.
I wasn't into Doom. It was
No.
in fact, every song was like dun 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 dun, dun. And it was because they were wedged in the middle of these two thrash bands. It just sort of I didn't quite get it,
Change of pace.
but I didn't understand the context.
Palate cleanser.
Palate cleanser, exactly. But yeah, I'm glad you said Doom because again, that's why I think there's a lot of similarity between them in a weird way and Black Sabbath again, because people say Black Sabbath heavy metal, but Black Sabbath were really the pioneers and the first doom metal bands, not just say
Definitely.
heavy metal band as well. And like, I'm not sure if you, I don't know any riffs by Celtic Frost, but I'm just going to do this for you because I've got my guitar. I was going to turn it on a little bit without wake. It is midnight now where we're recording this, and I don't want to wake up my daughter and wife, but. So Black Sabbath have got a song called "A Symptom of the Universe," I believe, and it goes a little bit like this. So can you hear the guitar? So for example, you've got this riff. I feel a lot of riffs on Morbid Tales are very much modelled on
definitely.
that riff,
Yeah.
but with different grooves. Can you sort of hear that?
Yeah.
That's the sort of feeling I get. So, and there's a lot of messing around by that flattened fifth and then the E power chord. So if you want to go a bit more into depth, but yeah, again, it's that it goes to show then the Sabbath doom influence. I think so.
Definitely. Yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely. So yeah. I mean, Celtic Frost. Was this their debut album?
No, I think let me just double check. I got a feeling it might be in the second. It could be. Oh no, yeah, of course it is. Yeah, because Hellhammer was the first band. So yeah, it is the debut album. Absolutely.
And again, how just talking about in perspective, nothing had sounded like this before, apart from maybe Bathory, which will be coming up.
And the thing is, not even Venom, because Venom were more. You could say Venom were more like Motorhead. Again, it was the punk element. Of thrash or crust punk, if you want to call it, which is almost like between thrash and punk. They were sort of closer to that. But yeah, no, there hadn't been this, and I think that's probably why they were so unpopular.
Yeah,
because it just sounded so gloomy and evil that no one wanted to have anything to do with them because they still viewed metal as it can't be dissonant. It has to have a level of, you must have a sing-along chorus.
Yeah.
Which obviously the new wave of heavy metal did. Glam rock, it was radio friendly.
Yes.
But this was not radio friendly in any way, shape, or form.
And that's the thing. So, how much of a risk were they taking by trying to make something that no one had heard of before, and make it so dark that no radio station or label would, or no radio station would touch it, and labels would hesitate to sign you as a result? Like, that was a brave move, because they weren't just taking like inspiration from what was already out there and kind of doing their own slant on it, much like you could potentially say Anthrax have done their own version of what Metallica were doing. You could potentially say that. And Metallica, they even with Kill 'Em All, they've done their version of whatever, and following on. But I mean, Celtic Frost essentially built what their sound and I'm sure they got influences, but like you say with Sabbath and that, but they essentially have built this sound from the ground up,
you
and it's a big risk.
This is how to say this into a sentence. Really, the this album, possibly, if you really analyze metal in regards to all the different styles, this album probably is the biggest jump from having nothing of the sort to this.
Yeah.
Would that make sense? Like, for
Yeah,
example,
definitely.
Kill 'Em All would have, from Metallica, came a lot from bits of like Merciful Fate or Venom or the new wave of British heavy metal music, but just faster.
Yeah.
And maybe, a lot of this does have a Black Sabbath element to it, but maybe I need to do more listening. But this is the most, technically, this could be one of the most original first metal albums ever, potentially. But again, people may disagree, and feel free to let us know if you do. But again, because we're trying to listen, back from the start forwards, just to sort of join the dots, if you will. But yeah, the more I've listened to this album, the more I think, Christ, man, this is so original.
Yeah, it is.
And I suppose they weren't looking to make a career of it. They just wanted to fucking do it because they believed in it, and it paid off.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, huge risk, but like I say, so big respect to them. Big respect to them. Yeah, definitely.
So I think that's a good way to finish, man. Like I said, I think as a contribution, this did so much for what then happened in the 80s, because I suppose out of the extreme metal styles, thrash was really the only thing going at that point, really, in extreme styles. Black and death came a lot later. There was technically black in lyrical content now happening because of Celtic Frost and Bathory, but I suppose musically it wasn't really standardized until almost the early 90s, I suppose, black metal, and it's like the second wave, I suppose. But lyrically, they got the ball rolling, even though they were doing a lot more thrashier, doomier stuff. But lyrically, definitely. Anyway, so we'll come to like the final album now of our top 5, even though there's a bit more to talk about after this. This is a palate cleanser in the respect of the type of metal we're going to be discussing, and so we've gone for Rising Force by the shred maestro, the guitarist from Sweden, Yngwie Malmsteen. Now, done a bit of research on this. Now, classical music in metal, you could say, went far back as the guitarist Ritchie Blackmore of Deep Purple. And even Jimmy Page had elements of that in his playing for Led Zeppelin. But then this dude turns up, and even though Eddie Van Halen then in 1978 with their debut album with the finger tapping had classical elements in that as well. But again, this album could technically take the title for most original from nothing to this album, as well as Morbid Tales by Celtic Frost, but in a completely different way.
Yeah.
But so this, you could say, this is probably the first neoclassical shred record unofficially. I think it is, from the research I've been doing. I could be wrong, but to the level this was done in the year 1984, this was a benchmark. This album was an absolute benchmark for neoclassical and shred metal, and
speed metal to an extent, I guess.
Well, speed metal is weird because speed metal, you could say, technically doesn't exist. I mean,
no, I suppose not.
It's hard to explain. Like, I don't know, because you get the speed metal elements in heavy metal, in thrash, in black metal sometimes. Like, you could say Deep Purple technically were the first to introduce the almost a double bass pedal type of or what became a Motorhead staple sound later on. They technically were the first to do it, but in regards to what it did to the guitar as well, I think that's why this album is so influential. Because from 1984 onwards up until the early 90s, probably 1990, and maybe came to a grinding halt then, this made every dude or girl go out and want to get a guitar and just want to learn to shred and just try and do as the best they can. And then people are one-upping each other and trying to release albums and to come out with this type of albums. And then you had, the Steve Vais. You had, even though Joe Satriani was around before that, but people like Satriani, people like, the Marty Friedman is of Megadeth. Is it Marty Friedman? Anyway, Megadeth lead guitarist who's not Dave Mustaine. The name escapes me. I think it's Marty Freeman.
It might be.
Not to be confused with Martin Freeman, the English actor. But again, the benchmark it's set, and what everyone was trying to do then, they were trying to add shred into their songs because the guitar solo was already God before Malmsteen turned up.
Yeah.
Hendrix did that to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But I just think this was an amazing. This is what you call a game changer.
Yes.
This album.
Big time. Big time. Yeah. I mean, this again, even what I wrote, this isn't. I again went into this a little bit naive. Not the type of thing I'd instantly listen to. And I come into thinking, I'm about to listen to half an hour's worth of guitar wankery.
Yeah.
Non-tasty wank I thought I was walking into, but it turned out I walked into tasty wank. So
yeah. For those just joining us, we're talking musically only, of course.
Yes. And like he just like the guitar was its own. Like you didn't on the this album had a few vocals. It was a very sparse of that. But so when there wasn't any vocals, I mean, the guitar basically did a pretty damn good job of replacing vocals with its own singing.
Great point.
And it was one of those ones that I listened to. I actually listened to in work while I was working, and it was kind of like I think I was doing some paperwork. I had all night to do the paperwork. There was no rush. I was just in the middle of doing paperwork, and this started playing, and it's just kind of started getting into it, and I was like, okay, I've got to put the pen down for this. Like I had to kind of take this in, and just I don't have a lot to say about this because it's not my favorite type of thing to listen to.
No,
all I can say is it's just insane. It is insane. Again, same with Morbid Tales. I cannot imagine what this would have been like to listen to in 1984 when you've got nothing to compare it to. Absolutely insane. Yeah.
No, man, absolutely. Like I said, I play guitar, but I'm not a lead guitarist in any way, shape, or form. I just haven't got the tasty licks to play lead guitar.
Yeah.
But there's a weird comparison, but I like to compare this album a bit like Ride the Lightning in the regards to the order of the songs is excellent. The variation of the songs, the changing in tempos. So I just think there's such tasty songs, and it's not just I think a lot of later Yngwie Malmsteen songs, it really much is guitar wankery, and it's just the song itself isn't very good. It's just about the wankery, but these are great songs, as in the chord progressions, the variations, the hooks. People say I think that he hit this album and this was his peak, as in regards to his actual albums. Maybe there's amazing songs and guitar contributions to songs, but as an album and songs, this is the best. I've heard lots of songs later than this album, but not whole albums, so I'll have to maybe change that. But yeah, the tone as well, it's not just full on just shred.
No,
You've got incredible acoustic playing.
Yeah.
And again, the sound engineering behind the acoustics is great. And then you've got you could say almost like Dimebag Darrelly type of the blues tone he sometimes has, and then the more shred, trebly stuff as well. So it's not just one guitar sound. You've got almost like 4 or 5 different sounds happening across the album, and that's what makes the it's tasty, not just wankery, but it's actually controlled wankery. I suppose you could call it. It is controlled.
Yeah,
it's not just flapping about everywhere. It's just it's been directed somewhere. But that's the best way musically to describe it.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is it does make total sense. It's not
But to be honest, I don't really have much more to say about the album. But again, it was a pleasant surprise. I can't believe it's taken me this long to listen to it. For those who are listening, this album is not actually on Spotify. It is available as a YouTube clip, so this won't be in the Spotify
No.
playlist. But yeah, so Rising Force by Yngwie Malmsteen is on YouTube. You can't listen to it in a full album. You can actually skip tracks as well. It's actually playlisted. So yeah, so Ben, so that was basically our top 5 for Rockerspective for 1984, and these are the top 5s that we've chosen as our favourites, but mainly ones that have been the biggest game changers for the different genres that came. So we've done tonight. We've done Ride the Lightning of Metallica, Fistful of Metal by Anthrax, A Sign of the Hammer from Manowar, Hellhammer and Celtic Frosts, Morbid Tales, and Apocalyptic Raids, and then of course Rising Force by Yngwie Malmsteen. So we got there in the end. So that was our top 5 for 1984. So next then, Papa Ben, we're going to move on to our top 5 honorable mentions. So basically albums we personally really enjoyed that didn't quite make the cut for the first 5. But again, that's not a bad thing because 1984, as we've noticed, gave us an absolute treasure trove of albums. So I really wish we could do a top 20 because there's so many albums I've really enjoyed listening to. So we've got our own. We actually don't know what each other's answers are, so it'll be interesting. Yeah. So we'll do sort of 5 to 1, and I got a feeling because of how we've been talking about this particular band, I think you and me might potentially have the same number 1 spot. We'll see. Yeah. So Ben, what have you? Give me a sentence. Why have you got number 5, and who's your number 5?
So, I actually, last night told you I wasn't going to put them in my top 5, and then I changed my mind. So, Bathory are in my number 5, and it's because I understood why the album sounded like it did. So super quickly, basically the reason why the album sounds very muddy and the mix is all over the place, it's because they had no money to make the album. I got it here. So they recorded the album on a homemade makeshift 8-track tape recorder, and they had it all mixed. So they had to run the tape at half speed to make it all fit because they had no money. The recording and mixing were done in somewhere between 32 and 56 hours, which is insanely fast. That is insane. So that explains why the whole thing sounds very, very muddy. But so now that I understand that and I listen to the album again, I'm good with it. I think, you know what, incredibly influential, and it's enjoyable for what it is.
Absolutely agree with you.
Very dark, very, very black metal. I mean, it is literally as influential as Celtic Frost for black metal. But that's my take on it anyway.
Do you know what? My number 5 is also Bathory. Bathory. And for the same reason, along with Morbid Tales and Apocalyptic Raids, it is probably the heaviest and darkest album to come out of 1984. And for black metal, way more so than death metal, especially vocally. Vocally, this is what guys and girls were starting to do with a raspy, high-pitched screeching, which you had in the early 90s. So this definitely set the tone there. And again, just the production, even though the story you just said about it was muddled because production value, I think people like this level of atmosphere, and that's again the early 90s. This is what a lot of black metal sounded like 10 years later.
Yeah. And so in some way, weirdly, the poor recording conditions added to the impact.
Yeah, absolutely. So there you are. That's number 5. What's your number 4?
My number 4, right? So I don't know if potentially I cheated. So I accidentally stumbled across this. So it was Haunting the Chapel, which is an EP by Slayer. I listened. I listened to the Spotify version. Obviously, this is how we are able to find all this music, and it's the Live Undead / Haunting the Chapel version. So technically,
that's a great version. It's 2 albums shoved together, isn't it?
It's the EP and then it's a live show. Interestingly, it's been claimed that the audience noises are fake.
I've heard that. I read that on Wikipedia.
And,
That's really interesting.
And after, I think they interviewed Dave Lombardo years later and that, and apparently it wasn't fake, but the original gig was cancelled, so they had to rearrange the gig, but they didn't have the venue, so they did it in a recording studio with 12 in front of 12 people,
because
and that's the reason why.
Because I always thought, God,
it sounds amazing, by the way.
It does sound amazing, because I thought, God, the audience seemed really close to the band, or really close to the microphone where this is being recorded, and you explaining that makes absolute loads of sense.
Yeah. But as a live performance, that is excellent live performance. And also, can I add, Tom Araya has got range. He doesn't kind of, it gets lost. He's got serious range.
Yeah. He doesn't. Yeah, as a singer, he doesn't get enough credit. I think so. In that era, I feel bad. We haven't mentioned Slayer potentially enough in this podcast, because you can't knock their contribution to the thrash. They were up there, and you that can't be overlooked at all. And again, if I had more top 5 spaces, I'd chuck in Haunting the Chapel /
Live and Dead. Yeah,
Live and Dead, because that's a cracking shout.
Yeah.
My number 4 is a band I knew nothing about until last week, and I was wondering, why have I never come across this band? It's a band that's actually named after a Judas Priest song, and it's Exciter. So I've got Exciter, and it's their debut. I think it's no, I don't know if it's the debut. I think it's the second album, but it's an album called Violence and Force. And again, you're talking about speed metal. This is absolute speed metal with the double bass drum sort of playing. And again, it's got very much that type of Judas Priestish type of feel to it.
It does, yeah.
But yeah,
it's exciting.
It is exciting. It is absolutely exciting. They're fun songs. They're just absolute fun songs. And I was absolutely surprised, thinking, why haven't this band have never come on my radar before? But massively surprised. So Violence and Force by Exciter is my number 4.
Yeah, cool.
What about your number 3?
Number 3 is you might have to correct the way I'm saying this, but it's Queensryche. Yeah, the Warning is the name of this one. I discovered this 2 days ago. Again, just cramming in albums left, right, and centre. And I come across this on the list that we've kind of got, and I was like, I'll have to listen to this. Really, really, just really taken back. Again, it's really original sounding. It's got a real Iron Maiden, Judas Priest kind of sound to it. Vocalist is amazing.
Off the charts.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. The whole album is super consistent, just top to bottom, super consistent. And what I didn't realize is this band is these guys are classed as one of the big 3 of prog metal. These guys, along with Dream Theater and Fate's Warning, are the forefathers of guys, the founders of prog metal. And I get that it's not prog as somebody who hasn't who hasn't too deep into this would imagine it to be. It's not pretentious. No. This is just real good quality, super high quality metal. That's super well written and is it's really, really good. Yeah, really enjoyed it.
Good shout, man. Again, 2 days ago was the first time I listened to this album as well. But
amazing.
Jeff Tate is a singer. He's a brilliant singer.
It's an amazing finish to the album. The last song, Roads to Madness, is a hell of a way of ending.
Like I said, it's a well crafted album. Now, my number 3 is an album I have known actually for many years, and again, it's one of my favorite bands. And there's again speed metal, sometimes thrash elements in this as well. And again, vocally, everyone was trying to sound like this guy at that time. And it's I got Judas Priest, Defenders of the Faith album. Yeah. Now again, like Ride and like Yngwie Malmsteen's album, the variation of songs is just excellent. There's such a massive variation, rather than just everything being the rhythmic difference, the keys, the difference in the keys, etc. It's this is their last, I think, heavy album, until Painkiller, because
Yeah.
after this album they became quite the commercial sort of cheesy sort of hair rock band, even though the album before Painkiller has got a lot of heavy drums, but
Mm,
composition wise it's a lot cheesier. But this is the last heavy
yeah.
attempt before Painkiller, so
Mm. It was
definitely
very enjoyable.
helping. Yeah, so definitely helping the thrash and the speed element of it, and vocally Rob's performance in this is just insane. Again, like as I said before, like Eric Adams and Manowar, writes amazing vocal lines, and the vocal lines in this album are just phenomenal. So yeah,
Yeah.
my number 3 is Judas Priest, Defenders of the Faith.
Cool.
What about your number 2?
Number
We're getting to
two.
the end.
Yeah.
Exciting.
Number 2 for me is Iron Maiden's Power Slave. First things first, it's probably my favorite artwork on any album.
That's it's a cracking cover. It's like the Egyptian theme, isn't it?
I don't know. I can't even tell you why, but it just makes parts of me tingle. I just don't know why. I can't explain why. It moves me. Every time I look at the album cover, I just look at it. I just go, that's fucking cool. Do you know what I mean? It actually moves me. It does. There's a certain epicness to it, which I need to get a T-shirt with that on. That's what I need to do.
Yeah.
And that is one that I want to own a vinyl of, because of the size of it. You know, just to own that, I think it'd be amazing. But yeah, so there's that. Again, there's some absolutely cracking songs on there. Obviously, it opens with Aces High. You've got 2 Minutes to Midnight.
2 Minutes to Midnight, yeah.
Power Slave. I love the song Power Slave. I think it's an absolutely amazing song.
It's one of their darkest songs, I think.
It is, yeah.
Chordally, it's chords they don't usually use. It's very not like heavy, as in like thrashy, but just the chords. It's very dark.
Yeah, and again, it's just super well written. Again, it's, Steve Harris is, well, I mean, he writes and he does most of the thing. He does most of the background work, I suppose, for the band. He works with the band, but he does a lot.
Yeah,
he takes the lead. But again, you just got some, like, it's got a great instrumental in Lost for Words. Mm-hmm. That's a great. And you've got they've done their take on a poem called "Rime of the Ancient Mariner."
Ancient Mariner. Yeah.
13 odd minutes long.
Yeah, it's.
You know,
I believe
what? That's
Bruce's favourite song to perform live. If I read somewhere, I think so.
It's an excellent like, it's not, that's the thing, it's not a straight rendition of the poem. It's their interpretation of the poem that has some of the lines from the poem in, and it is excellent. It's a great, I believe it's the last song, and it's a great way to end. And it's aged, like, that album has aged very, very well.
It has, yeah,
very, very well. But yes, so for me, that's my second. Yeah.
Cool, man. That's a great shout. And again, mine. Weird, I haven't actually mentioned this, but I told you I'm a big Manowar fan, and I've not mentioned that in 1984 they actually released 2 kick-ass albums. And as I've mentioned to you before, I almost put this one instead of Sign of the Hammer, and they kept swapping back and forth, but I decided to go to Sign of the Hammer because that's actually the first one I remember listening to. But my number 2 is Manowar's Hail to England. Riffs, man. Riffs, bass, chorus hooks, Viking chorus hooks. Opening song, Blood of My Enemies, is brilliant. It's got a cracking song called Kill with Power. Kill with Power. And it's got a crazy double kick drum intro. Probably after Painkiller, the most famous drum intro, double bass pedal intro I could think of. Yeah. But and there's incredible shredding bass on that song, Kill with Power. It's got, again, what's it called? It's got another bass solo in it. Black Arrows. Yeah. Let each note I now play be a black arrow of death, sent straight to the heart of all those who play false metal. What a great effing line for a bass solo to start on. But it's an insane album. Again, when they palm mute together, the guitarist and then Joey DiMaio, the bass player, no one sounds like that. Again, it's such an original sound. Only Manowar can do that particular sound. And again,
not just do it's not just do the sound. It's they're the only ones who can pull it off.
Yes, absolutely. But
Anyone else
yeah,
and it would sound really pretentious. They've
absolutely, man.
somehow made it work. I'm not quite sure how. Um, this album, I definitely want to go back and listen to because I could only find it on YouTube,
Yeah, it's
and
from Spotify, that's correct.
yeah, and it wasn't on.
The best
I got,
quality.
no. So I need to find. I need to either I'll buy and download it, or I need to find a CD and listen to it.
So, yeah, I might try and find a CD. I used to have it. I'll try and dig it out. I might just get another one. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's worth having as a CD because again, especially with the bass work. Again, the
yeah,
bass work in this is amazing, and
excellent cover
vocally,
as
Eric
well.
Adams. Yes, weirdly, it's called "Hail to England," but it's a British flag on the front.
Yep.
And the reason they call "Hail to England" is because in the States they weren't getting the airplay they wanted from the radio stations, but they had fans in the UK, which basically kept them going and kept their name going, and that's why
Yeah,
they decided to call it "Hail to England" because of the
that's pretty
fans
good of them.
mainly in England, and that's why lyrically the song "Hail to" there's a track 4 on this album is called "Hail to England" as well, and lyrically that song is sort of dedicated to the fans. So that's really interesting.
That's pretty cool. I got to say, yeah.
So basically, Ben, you and I have got now number 1 left, and I think by process of elimination, because how we've been talking about this band, I think you and I have found a new favorite band. So
Oh yeah.
if you show me mine, I'll show you yours. Who is your number 1?
Metal Church by Metal Church.
Yes, 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 yes. Metal
What
Church.
an album!
Oh.
Like, oh my god, what an album! If Ride the Lightning wasn't in this year, this would be top for this year. I cannot believe this came out in 1984.
Technically,
I just
it's
cannot
incredible.
believe it. It sounds so modern, and it's just. And again, when we go and say like, oh, the vocalists are nuts, we could say that about every single vocalist that's ever lived. But that's the point, is like we've heard some good vocalists, but when we say these guys are good, we're talking another level above that. And this guy, can't remember his name, but it's just yeah, again, it's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous in range, ability.
Yeah, I could be wrong, but I'm sure I read yesterday. But he did the first album with them, but then it was a different singer. I think I might be completely wrong. Very much like the Anthrax situation.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
That's also my number 1, Metal Church. Again, it's almost like if Testament or Megadeth were recording albums in 1984, it'd be a mix of the both. I feel there's a very similar riff approach to how they do the riffs. And there's even like sort of Slayerisms, or what we now know Slayerisms in them as well, with sort of like, riffs based around the Rain and Blood, that type of approach. But and again, talking about, this is another great example of doing a cover as your last song and giving your own take on it. And they've got Deep Purple's Highway Star. They play it faster, and they show you how speed metal is supposed to be played. And I think this is a brilliant way to end an album. And it's a great example of how you properly choose your cover and where you put your cover song. And it should always be at the bloody end of the album.
And have no consequence to the album. It's its own thing. Oh no, definitely. And this album has a hell of a 1-2 punch through the beginning of the album, because it starts off with Beyond the Black, and then it plays the self-titled song of the self-titled album, Metal Church. And again, just really, especially Metal Church, it's got such a different sound, because it starts off with like that kind of, those drums just kind of kick in basically, and it's not playing anything super crazy. It's locking in. It's just from the get-go. It's just the drum playing basically, and it's just locking in the beat basically. It's not doing anything super special apart from locking that in. And then the bass comes in, and again the bass sound is really good on this album.
It is a really good sounding bass. Yeah,
and it's there's like a groove to it, and you're like, this could be like almost like Suicidal Tendencies type of.
Yes.
Like, yeah. And then just this. I cannot believe I haven't heard this band up until this point.
That is absolutely all I could think about as well. Yeah. I think I might have heard a song years ago, and I thought, it's all right, but maybe it was a song later on, and it was a weakish one. But I don't. Sometimes just bands and they just somehow go under your radar completely undetected
Yeah.
because you haven't had the spare time to think, oh yeah, I should get into that band. I've heard
Yeah.
things. But yeah, man, you can not underestimate Metal Church's contribution to
Oof,
thrash metal because
no.
it's basically been massively underrated because we know about Kill 'Em All, and to a certain extent, I think people, even like myself, to be accused over years of probably painting Metallica too much like the original purveyors and no one
Yeah.
came before them or no one else was around at the same time as them. It was just Metallica, thrash gods. That's not true. They obviously contributed, but that's why we're doing these shows is to
Yeah.
to really find the truth and to join the dots and by doing that we've come across Metal Church. Thank
And I'm
you.
glad. I'm glad. Yeah.
I am glad as well. So those are our top 5 honorable mentions, and we both had the same one for number 5 and absolutely the same one for number 1. So Metal Church's debut album, Metal Church, this has to be with Kill 'Em All, and again,
Yeah.
Fistful of Metal, one of the best thrash debuts ever.
Oh yeah.
This is incredible. It really is. We can, yeah. I'd love to talk. I'd love to come across them again in future
I hope so.
Rockerspectives, which I'm sure we will. Now we're coming to the end of our show. Now we've had a long show tonight because again, 1984. You just can't quickly go over it. So Ben, we're going to tell everyone our favorite album, our favorite song, our favorite riff, if you can, favorite album cover, and which we think is the most influential album. So Ben, your favorite album from this year?
Favorite album from this year. I don't want it to it's very difficult to say not Ride the Lightning, isn't it? So it has to be Ride the Lightning. It has to be. But I again with the thing, if Ride the Lightning came out any other year, I would have chosen Metal Church. Just
nice.
I don't know if that helps with things. What about you?
Cool. Keep it simple. Ride the Lightning. It's my favorite album of all time. It'll always be my favorite from 1984. So yeah, my favorite album from 1984 is Ride the Lightning.
Lovely.
What is your favorite song?
That is hard. That's hard. So
you suggested this.
Yeah, I know I did. Stupid. Shouldn't. Okay, so I'd just like to point out I've got like a number of songs which I'd say are all for me kind of like on a level playing field. So if I just throw a dart and it's going to hit one of them type thing, I'm going to say Death Rider.
Oh, great shout!
Because
that's a great shout.
I could have named pretty much any song from Ride the Lightning, Metal Church. There's Power Slave. I love, like they're all up there as my favorites from this. So if I just threw a dart and it would hit one of them, I'd say Death Rider. But it could be one of probably about put it this way, I could probably do like 2 albums worth of my favorite songs from this year alone. So yeah, I'll say Death Rider because it's just. As an impact to an album, as take into consideration that's a debut album as well. First song of the album, it's just coming out the gate swinging, and I love it, and it's just cool as all hell. What about
you said, kicks you in the nuts, as you said.
Oh yeah.
Very much the same with me. I had 7 songs. I'm gonna chuck a dart at it, but I've chosen a song which I've known for a long time. Lyrically, I think it's so fun, and I think it encompasses 1984 as the year where people are talking about metal in songs as a topic, like Metal Thrashing Mad, for example, or Metallica's Whiplash from Kill 'Em All album. But I'm a huge fan of Manowar's opening song for Sign of the Hammer. It's All Men Play on 10. It's about don't turn your volume down like a bunch of pussies, play like us and turn it up fully. And the opening lyrics, I made a rock and roll sin when I tried giving in to make money, had to turn down low. I said, why be proud? It's just lyrically, it's just brilliant. And so my favorite song probably, again, I could have said anything from Ride the Lightning. I could have said Fight Fire with Fire. It's one of my favorite Metallica songs. But man, I'm just because I want to variate it rather than say Ride the Lightning for every question. My favorite song from 1984 is All Men Play on 10 by Manowar.
Awesome.
Now this is the bastard favorite riff. I think it's a dart again.
Yeah, again, there's too many to choose from, I would say, but I'm gonna keep it simple and say, because of the level of, potentially again taking into consideration where it sits in the album and the impact it has, I'm gonna say Creeping Death's opening opening riff, like take into consideration that you've had Escape straight before it, you've had the palette cleanser, and then it just, if you're talking about Street Fighter, it just Hadoukens you straight through the wall type thing.
Hadouken. That's a great shout. And I'm going to have to say, I've basically chosen sort of 3 riffs, which I find it difficult to... can you hear the guitar?
Yeah, we can hear it enough, I think.
Cool, yeah. My wife is still sleeping. It is 5 to 1 in the morning. But I've got... I'll play them in reverse order. So I've got a top 3. So I've got a Judas Priest song, The Sentinel. My hands are cold now. This kitchen is freezing, so so. So that's one of them, even though that's only half the riff. But my guitar's gone out of tune a bit because this room's got really cold. But I'm also a massive fan of "Hail to England's opening riff. Etc. 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 But probably because you can't help but do that bass face and just go up and down like a crazy person and just close your eyes if you were playing it on bass or guitar, and it has to be the second riff from For Whom the Bell Tolls. That's probably my favorite riff from 1984. It's just
that riff is like the metal version of the Jaws theme tune, isn't it?
Yes.
Something's coming to get you, and it's coming to hurt you.
And again, the fact it doesn't repeat, as we mentioned, it just comes in there, comes in and out, and it goes away, and then it changes again. But yeah, that's probably my favorite riff, is that.
Amazing.
Because it's simple to play as well. You're just so happy you've achieved to be able to play it when you've just started out on the guitar or bass.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's something
definitely.
that's playable very early on, and you think, yeah, I'm metal as fuck. I can play it now. Now, what's your favorite album cover?
I don't think it's any secret. It's Power Slave.
Power Slave.
It's just so cool.
Mine, because it's just dirty. It's Wasp's album. Unfortunately, we haven't had enough time or platform space to talk about the hair metal or the glam rock type of stuff, because they were very big contributors of this year, but unfortunately just didn't make the cut because the sheer amount of albums that came out from 1984. Yeah. Again, you've got Wasp, you've got Rat, Dokken, Europe, even Pantera released a tidy album from 1984 in that genre as well. But again, Saxon, again, there's been so many albums, but yeah, as an album cover, Wasp.
Yeah, it's pretty dirty, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty dirty. And finally, you may be able to use the same answer twice. The most influential album of 1984 is?
I'm gonna give it to Celtic Frost. I think it's only fair.
Yeah.
Again,
I'll be the pussy. I'll say Ride the Lightning. You can go Celtic Frost.
Yeah. I think Celtic Frost. They inadvertently set the tone for 3 subgenres.
Yeah.
Along with Bathory, obviously, but yeah. So yeah, definitely.
Dude, awesome. That's hell of a discussion we've had tonight, because there's just been so much to get through just to discuss all these things, because content wise so much happened in 1984, and it's just, again, it's my single favorite year in metal. It's again, like I said right at the beginning, if you talk about it, if you just use Metallica as an example, I know we're not closet Metallica fans, we're open Metallica fans, but if you listen to Kill 'Em All and you listen to Master of Puppets, Ride the Lightning is again a
The
perfect
bridge.
in that sandwich. The bridge, that's the word I was looking for. It is a bridge. It's between raw and polished. And again,
Yeah.
as I mentioned right at the beginning, it shows melody and heaviness. And I've said this for years, like just to myself. You know, what Ride the Lightning did, it showed the possibility of what eventually became melodic death metal, or the
Yeah. Yeah.
possibilities of melodic. And that sounds stupid to link Ride the Lightning to melodic death metal, but again, it's the idea of you can have something that sounds melodic and heavy as fuck at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
just listen to the end of One by Metallica on the And Justice for All album,
Mm.
the ending for that.
Yeah.
Again, melody, harmony, and heaviness. That's why I think
Definitely.
why it made Ride the Lightning gave so much influence, because of the bridging of melody, rhythm, heaviness all at
Mm.
once.
Definitely.
But what an episode! So that concludes tonight's Rockerspective, looking back at 1984. So, to all our fathers of I'm getting cold here. It's very cold. I'm mixing up my words. It's very cold kitchen. So, to all of our fathers of metal podcast listeners, so diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you very much for your company as ever. And remember, no matter the podcast topic, whether it's whammy bars or weaning, napalm death or nappies, it's always good to talk. So, from myself, Daddy Hugh,
And myself, Papa Ben. We will
be
see
kind to
you.
yourself.
We'll see you in the next episode.
Yeah, we'll see you for the next episode of Rockerspective. But for now, Nostar, it's getting late. We'll catch you soon. Cheers, Nostar.
Bye.